When Andrew Michaels, a wealthy businessman from an elite neighborhood, announced he was adopting 7 orphaned sisters, it sent shockwaves through his community. The decision wasn't just surprising, it was divisive. People whispered behind his back, questioning his motives. They laughed at the idea of a man like Andrew, a single white father raising 7 black girls. "This is outrageous," they said. "What does he think he's doing? A publicity stunt? A midlife crisis?" Bookmark, go back. But Andrew didn't care about their judgment. While the world doubted him, those 7 little girls saw something they hadn't felt in years: hope. Yet the road ahead was anything but smooth. Years later, the very people who mocked Andrew and his daughters would find themselves begging for their help in an unimaginable twist of fate. Before we dive into this captivating story of resilience, transformation, and redemption, comment below and tell us where you're watching from today. And if you love stories like this one about the power of family and love overcoming all odds, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out. Andrew Michaels stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony, staring out at the city bathed in the warm hues of a setting sun. It should have been a view filled with satisfaction, a skyline dominated by buildings his investments helped shape, a testament to his success as one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city. Yet, Andrew felt only emptiness. The echoes of a life he once had with his daughter Lucy lingered in every corner of the silent home behind him. 5 years had passed since he'd lost her to illness, but her absence remained a wound that never fully healed. A silver-framed photograph on his desk bore Lucy's radiant smile, her school uniform neat and tidy as she posed for what would unknowingly be her final picture. Andrew's fingers brushed over the glass surface, a bittersweet habit he hadn't managed to let go of. He sighed, his world of luxury feeling more hollow with each passing day. Bookmark. But everything changed that afternoon during a visit to the Hope Blossom Foster Center. What began as a routine meeting to discuss funding turned into a life-altering encounter. The director, Mrs. Alvarez, had invited Andrew to tour the facility, showcasing its programs and children. It was in the courtyard that he saw them. 7 sisters, their ages spanning from 5 to 12, jumping rope together. Their laughter rang through the air, a joyful defiance of the challenges they faced. The eldest, a serious-looking girl named Maya, watched over the youngest, who clung tightly to her hand. "They've been through so much," Mrs. Alvarez said softly, drawing Andrew's attention. "Their parents passed away in a tragic accident. We've tried to find a home for them, but no one is willing to take all 7. Most families insist on separating them, and that's something we won't do." Andrew's gaze lingered on the girls. There was something magnetic about their bond, a resilience that reminded him of Lucy's determination. As he listened to their stories, neatly documented in a folder Mrs. Alvarez handed him, a spark ignited within him, something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. Back in his office that evening, Andrew spread the photographs of the girls across his desk. 7 small faces stared back at him, each with a unique story of pain and perseverance. "What would you think of this, Lucy?" he whispered, glancing at her photograph. "Would you want to share your dad's love with 7 new sisters?" The idea of filling his sprawling mansion with the sound of children's laughter again was both thrilling and terrifying. Andrew knew this decision would be met with skepticism, perhaps even outrage. He was a single white man adopting 7 black girls in a community where appearances mattered more than compassion. He turned to the window, his reflection merging with the city lights. For years, his wealth and connections had done little to fill the void left by Lucy. But this was something real, something that could give meaning to the life he'd been merely existing in. The next morning, Andrew called Mrs. Alvarez. His voice was steady but tinged with emotion as he said, "I'd like to adopt them. All 7. The news spread quickly, and the reactions were as Andrew had expected. His decision shocked the upper-class neighborhood where he lived, an exclusive enclave of immaculate lawns and designer cars. Whispers traveled faster than wildfire. "Did you hear what Andrew Michaels has done?" Margaret Harrington, one of his longtime neighbors, said to her friend over coffee, 7 of them. All black. Can you imagine? What's he thinking? Richard Peterson, another prominent figure in the neighborhood, sneered at the idea. He's clearly lost his mind, he told his golf buddies. turning that beautiful house of his into a shelter. It's disgraceful. Even in professional circles, the decision raised eyebrows. He's playing savior, some murmured, while others questioned his motives. But Andrew didn't care. He knew the road ahead would be steep, filled with challenges and prejudice, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. The day the girls arrived at Andrew's mansion was one of cautious excitement. Each room had been meticulously prepared with new bedding, clothes, and thoughtful decorations to match the girls' individual interests. Andrew stood at the grand entrance as the social worker's car pulled into the driveway. The sisters stepped out hesitantly, their belongings packed in worn bags. Maya held the youngest, Tessa, protectively as they approached the imposing stone steps. Andrew greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome home," he said, his voice gentle. The girls' reactions varied. Some were wide-eyed with wonder at the grandeur of the mansion, while others, like Maya, maintained a guarded expression. 11-year-old Rachel finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "This is all ours?" Andrew knelt at their level. "It's not just mine, it's ours now," he assured them. "You're home. You're forever home." Later that evening, Andrew watched as the girls explored their new environment. Tessa, the youngest, twirled in the hallway, her braids swinging as she giggled. Maya, still holding back, stood near the staircase with a thoughtful expression. Andrew approached her carefully. "What's on your mind, Maya?" he asked. She hesitated, fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "What if we don't fit in here?" His heart ached at her uncertainty. "You already fit in perfectly," he said with conviction. "This isn't about fitting into a house or neighborhood. It's about being a family. Families belong together." Slowly but surely, Maya's expression softened. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of belonging. In the weeks that followed, Andrew worked tirelessly to integrate the girls into their new lives. He juggled paperwork, home studies, and adjustments to their routines, determined to provide them with the stability they deserved. But while the mansion buzzed with newfound energy, the outside world remained unkind. At a neighborhood barbecue, Andrew noticed how conversations hushed as he approached, neighbors avoiding eye contact. "What do they think they're doing here?" Someone whispered behind a hedge. Andrew's plate remained untouched as he overheard remarks laced with thinly veiled prejudice. "They're not exactly country club material," someone said with a laugh. It stung, but Andrew refused to let it show. His daughters weren't a charity case. They were his family, and he would move mountains to protect them. As he left the event, he resolved to shield the girls from this hostility, while teaching them the strength to face it head-on. What mattered most wasn't what the world thought of them, but how they saw themselves, as a family bound by love, ready to conquer whatever came their way. The Michaels mansion was no longer silent. Instead, it hummed with life. The once empty halls echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the occasional sounds of squabbles between siblings. Each of the 7 girls brought a unique energy to the household, transforming it into a vibrant, bustling home. Andrew spent the first few weeks focused on helping the girls settle in. The adjustment wasn't without its bumps. The younger ones, like Tessa and Jasmine, immediately embraced the novelty of having their own rooms, diving onto their beds with giddy excitement. Maya, however, took longer to let her guard down. As the oldest, she felt responsible for her sisters, and often seemed hesitant to trust that this new life was permanent. "Everything's so big," Maya murmured one evening as Andrew walked her through the library. She ran her fingers along the rows of books, her expression a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "What if we mess it up?" Andrew crouched down to her level, his tone gentle but firm. "This house isn't about being perfect, Maya. It's about being together. You don't have to worry anymore. You're safe, all of you are." His words seemed to lift a weight off her shoulders, and she nodded, though her smile remained cautious. Mornings at the Michaels' home became a carefully orchestrated chaos. Breakfast was a flurry of activity as Andrew juggled pancakes, cereal bowls, and the occasional spilled juice. The girls helped where they could, but with 7 of them, there was no shortage of mishaps. "Dad, Tessa's trying to eat her cereal with a fork," Rachel exclaimed, laughing as the youngest sister giggled unapologetically. "Let her experiment," Andrew said, smiling as he flipped another pancake. Great inventors started somewhere. The girls' laughter filled the kitchen, a sound Andrew hadn't realized he'd missed so deeply. Despite the warmth inside their home, challenges persisted whenever they stepped outside. On a sunny afternoon, Andrew took the girls to the local park, hoping for a relaxing outing. The playground, however, became a stark reminder of the prejudices they faced. As the girls climbed onto the swings, other parents began pulling their children away, murmuring excuses about needing to leave. Andrew noticed the furtive glances and hushed whispers, but kept his focus on his daughters, cheering as Tessa tried to go higher than her sisters. "Why are they leaving, Daddy?" Jasmine asked, her big eyes filled with confusion. Andrew knelt down beside her, his heart aching. "Sometimes people don't understand things that are different," he explained carefully. "But that's their problem, not ours. What's important is that you know how special you are." Jasmine seemed to accept his words, but Andrew could see the uncertainty lingering in her expression. Determined to help the girls feel more at home in the community, Andrew decided to host a grand welcome gala at the mansion. He poured his energy into planning every detail, from hiring a string quartet to decorating the ballroom with twinkling lights. His hope was that the event would give his neighbors a chance to see the girls for who they truly were: bright, kind, and full of potential. The girls were both excited and nervous as they prepared for the event. Andrew had taken them shopping for dresses, ensuring each one felt like a princess. Maya wore soft pink, Jasmine chose a bold yellow, and Tessa twirled happily in her white gown. "Do you think they'll like us?" Maya asked as Andrew adjusted her sash. "They'd be fools not to," he replied with a reassuring smile. "Just be yourselves and the rest will fall into place." As the clock struck 7, the family stood at the top of the grand staircase, waiting to greet their guests. The quartet played softly, and the ballroom glittered with anticipation. But as the minutes turned into hours, the anticipation gave way to disappointment. Only a handful of guests arrived, most staying just long enough to sip a glass of champagne before leaving. Mrs. Henderson, a real estate agent from the neighborhood, made her disdain clear. "Well, this has been interesting," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she left. The girls tried to keep their spirits up, but Andrew could see the hurt in their eyes. Rachel, the most sensitive of the group, finally broke down. "Why don't they like us?" she whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Andrew gathered his daughters in his arms, their beautiful dresses now feeling like cruel reminders of rejection. "It's not about you," he said firmly. "It's about them. They're the ones who can't see how amazing you are. But I promise you this, we're not going to let their ignorance stop us from being happy." In the weeks following the gala, Andrew doubled down on fostering a sense of belonging within their home. He encouraged the girls to focus on what made them happy rather than worrying about what others thought. "Let's make this house our world," he told them one evening at dinner. "A place where we celebrate each other, no matter what happens outside." And so the Michaels' home became a haven. They spent their days exploring hobbies and discovering talents they never knew they had. Rachel developed a passion for painting, often turning one of the spare rooms into her personal studio. Maya showed a knack for organizing, helping Andrew revamp his cluttered office. Jasmine, the athlete of the group, started soccer drills in the backyard, with Tessa cheering her on from the sidelines. Andrew watched with pride as his daughters grew more confident in themselves, their bond strengthening with each shared moment. They were a family now, and no amount of prejudice from the outside world could change that. Though life inside the mansion was filled with warmth and love, the world outside remained cold. At the grocery store, Andrew noticed how people avoided making eye contact with him or his daughters. On their walks through the neighborhood, curtains rustled as homeowners peered out, their judgment unmistakable. At first, the girls tried to ignore it, but the constant reminders of being unwelcome took a toll. "Why do they hate us?" Maya asked one evening as she helped Andrew clean up after dinner. Andrew set down the dish he was drying and turned to her. "Hate often comes from fear, Maya. People are afraid of what they don't understand. But we can't let their fear dictate how we live our lives. We show them who we are, not with words, but with actions." His words planted a seed of determination in Maya. Slowly but surely, the girls began to channel their frustrations into something constructive. The Michaels mansion became more than a home. It became a place of growth and transformation. Andrew encouraged the girls to channel their energy into discovering their talents and passions, finding joy in the process rather than dwelling on the negativity surrounding them. Over time, their pain began to morph into resilience, and their bond as a family grew stronger. One sunny morning, Andrew gathered the girls in the library, now transformed into a vibrant learning space. A world map hung on one wall, shelves brimmed with books, and a whiteboard displayed today's lesson plans. "I've decided to homeschool all of you," Andrew announced, a mix of excitement and apprehension in his voice. The sisters exchanged curious glances. "But why, Dad?" asked Maya, the eldest, always the most vocal. "I want to give you the best education possible," Andrew explained, "and I want it to happen in an environment where you feel safe and supported. This is about more than academics. It's about building a foundation for your future." At first, the transition was challenging. Maya found herself taking on a leadership role among her sisters, helping Andrew keep things organized. Rachel discovered a surprising love for science experiments, while Jasmine excelled in history, frequently leading discussions. Even the youngest, Tessa, brought an infectious enthusiasm to every subject, often turning lessons into impromptu performances. Andrew's involvement made all the difference. He joined their lessons when he could, patiently guiding them through difficult topics and celebrating their victories, no matter how small. As weeks turned into months, the girls began to flourish in ways Andrew could never have anticipated. Rachel, who was once reserved and hesitant, transformed a corner of the mansion into her personal art studio. Her paintings, often inspired by the world she imagined beyond their gates, were filled with vibrant colors and sweeping landscapes. "Dad, what do you think?" she asked one evening, holding up a canvas featuring a sunrise over rolling hills. Andrew marveled at her talent. "I think you've captured something beautiful, Rachel," he said, his pride evident. "Just like you." Jasmine, on the other hand, turned to sports. Andrew had hired a coach to teach her soccer, and the backyard soon became her training ground. Her natural agility and determination impressed even the coach, who encouraged her to consider competitive play. Tessa, ever the cheerleader, mimicked her sister's moves, often stumbling but laughing as she tried to keep up. Meanwhile, Maya discovered her knack for leadership. She began organizing their daily schedules, ensuring everyone had time for both studies and fun. Her meticulousness even extended to Andrew's office, where she helped him create a filing system that transformed his chaotic workspace into a model of efficiency. "You've got a gift, Maya," Andrew said one afternoon, watching her sort documents with precision. She smiled shyly. "I just like things to make sense." One day, Andrew had an idea to bring the family even closer. Sitting around the dinner table, he presented it to the girls. "What if we worked on a project together?" he began, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "Something that lets us give back to the community." The girls leaned in, intrigued. "What kind of project?" Rachel asked. "Anything you want," Andrew replied. "The point is to do it together and to show the world what we're capable of as a family." After some brainstorming, they decided to create handmade gift baskets filled with artisanal items. Each girl would contribute her unique skills. Rachel's artistic flair for decorating, Jasmine's organization for inventory, and Tessa's playful energy to keep spirits high. The project quickly took over one of the mansion's unused rooms, which they transformed into a workshop. It wasn't long before their efforts bore fruit. Word spread about their beautifully crafted baskets, and neighbors, some of whom had previously been skeptical, began placing orders. "Do you think they're buying them because they actually like them?" Maya asked cautiously one day as they worked. Andrew chuckled. "Well, let's give them something so good they won't have to pretend." The project wasn't just about selling products. It was about building confidence and showing the girls that they had something valuable to offer. Despite their progress, the girls still faced resistance from the community. On Saturday, they volunteered to help clean up a local park. Armed with gloves, trash bags, and determination, they worked tirelessly to beautify the space. But even here, the whispers followed. "Look at them," someone muttered, trying to prove something. Maya overheard and stiffened, but she kept working. Later, when Andrew joined them with a cooler of water, she shared her frustration. They'll never see us for who we are, will they? Andrew placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They might not today, he admitted, but we're not doing this for their approval. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and sometimes doing the right thing is enough. Maya nodded, her resolve hardening. Then we'll keep doing it. Back at the mansion, life continued to thrive. The girls spent their evenings gathered in the family room, sharing stories about their day. Andrew often joined them, listening with a mixture of amusement and pride as they recounted their small victories and funny mishaps. One night, as they prepared for bed, Tessa climbed onto Andrew's lap, her small arms wrapping tightly around his neck. "I love you, Daddy," she said softly. It was the first time any of them had called him that without hesitation, and Andrew's heart swelled. "I love you too, sweetheart," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. That moment solidified what they all already knew. They were a family in every sense of the word. As time passed, the girls learned to lean on one another for strength. They supported each other's endeavors, attended each other's soccer games, admired each other's art, and celebrated every small win. "Do you know what makes us strong?" Andrew asked during one of their family dinners. "The fact that we're together," Maya answered confidently. Andrew smiled, raising his glass. "Exactly. And as long as we stick together, there's nothing we can't face." The girls clinked their glasses against his, their faces glowing with a newfound sense of belonging. In those moments of unity, Andrew saw the potential for something greater. His daughters were no longer just adjusting to their new life. They were thriving. They had turned their pain into purpose, their struggles into strength. What they couldn't see yet, but Andrew could, was that their light was beginning to shine beyond the walls of their home, touching the lives of everyone around them. The Michaels family's efforts to build a meaningful life together began to ripple outward, creating small but significant changes in the attitudes of their community. While the girls still faced prejudice, their acts of kindness and determination to rise above negativity slowly began to soften the edges of the neighborhood's coldness. One bright Saturday morning, Andrew and the girls headed out for another park cleanup project. Armed with gloves and trash bags, they worked efficiently, picking up litter, arranging flower beds, and wiping down benches. While they focused on their task, a few passers-by began to take notice. Bookmark. Eleanor Chen, the owner of a nearby flower shop, watched from a distance before cautiously approaching. "You've done a wonderful job here," she said hesitantly, her gaze shifting to the freshly cleaned paths. Rachel looked up, wiping sweat from her brow. "Thank you," she replied with a warm smile. "It feels good to make it nice for everyone." Eleanor nodded, a flicker of shame crossing her face. She'd overheard the rumors about the Michaels family but hadn't actively participated in them. Now, seeing the girls' sincerity, she began to reconsider her assumptions. The next day, Eleanor left a bouquet of flowers on the Michaels' doorstep with a simple note: "Thank you for making our park beautiful." Andrew read the note aloud to the girls, his voice filled with pride. "See?" he said. "Every small act of kindness makes a difference." At first, the signs of change were subtle. A neighbor who usually avoided eye contact began offering a small wave. The grocery store clerk, who had once been curt, now greeted the girls with a polite smile. Though these gestures were small, they carried weight. During another cleanup day, an elderly man named Mr. Wilson stopped by with a bag of sandwiches. He had been one of the Michaels family's most vocal critics, but seeing the girls work tirelessly to improve the neighborhood had made him rethink his stance. "My grandson told me you helped him with his science homework," Mr. Wilson said, addressing Maya. "He's never been this excited about school before." Maya smiled, her initial wariness melting into gratitude. "He's a smart kid," she replied. Andrew watched the exchange from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. It was small moments like these that reminded him they were making progress, even if it was slow. The girls' dedication to community service began extending beyond the park. They started volunteering at the Hope Haven shelter, sorting donations and serving meals. At first, the other volunteers kept their distance, whispering about the family behind their backs. But as the weeks passed, the sisters' unwavering commitment won them over. Miss Patterson, the elderly shelter coordinator, was particularly touched by their efforts. "These girls have the biggest hearts," she told Andrew one afternoon. They've inspired everyone here to work harder." The shelter became a place where the girls felt truly accepted, a haven from the judgment they still encountered elsewhere. It was also where they began to form genuine connections with people who saw them for their kindness and hard work, not their differences. One evening, as they returned home from the shelter, Jasmine turned to Andrew and said, "I think we're starting to make a difference, Dad." Andrew smiled, his pride evident. "You're doing more than that. You're showing people what it means to care." News of the Michaels family's contributions slowly spread through the town. The local newspaper featured an article about their efforts, accompanied by a photo of the girls smiling as they worked at the shelter. The headline read, "Family brings hope to the community." The article highlighted their park cleanups, tutoring sessions, and volunteer work, portraying the girls as role models rather than outcasts. For the first time, Andrew felt like the tide was beginning to turn. "That's us," Tessa exclaimed when she saw the article. She pointed at the picture with wide eyes, her excitement infectious. The older girls laughed, but there was a shared sense of accomplishment in the room. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving and making a tangible impact. Not everyone in the community was ready to change. Many still clung to their prejudices, unwilling to admit they had misjudged the Michaels family. However, a growing number of people began to step forward in support. Mrs. Harrington, who had once led a campaign to exclude the family from neighborhood events, hesitated outside the mansion one afternoon before finally knocking on the door. Andrew answered, his surprise evident. "Mrs. Harrington," he said, masking his unease. "What brings you here?" She held out a basket filled with baked goods. "I wanted to thank you for what you and your daughters have done for the community," she said, her voice faltering. Andrew accepted the basket, his expression softening. "That means a lot," he replied. "Thank you." The girls watched from the stairs, exchanging astonished looks. Maya whispered, "Do you think she really means it?" "I think it's a start," Andrew said, setting the basket down. One of the most surprising moments came from Richard Peterson, the Michaels' former golf buddy and one of their most outspoken critics. During a neighborhood association meeting, Richard stood up and addressed the group. "We've been wrong about the Michaels family," he said, his tone firm. "They've done more for this community in a year than most of us have in a lifetime. It's time we stop judging them and start supporting them." The room fell silent, and though not everyone agreed, it was clear that Richard's words carried weight. When Andrew heard about it later, he felt a mixture of gratitude and hope. Change was possible, even among those who had been most resistant. To celebrate their progress, Andrew planned a small family dinner, inviting a few of the new friends they'd made along the way. Mrs. Chen brought a beautiful flower arrangement, and Miss Patterson joined them with stories from the shelter. As the group gathered around the table, laughing and sharing stories, Andrew looked at his daughters, their faces glowing with happiness. "We've come a long way," he said, raising his glass. "And we're just getting started." The girls clinked their glasses together, their bond stronger than ever. Though they still faced challenges, the Michaels family had begun to plant seeds of change in a community that once saw them as outsiders. Their kindness and perseverance were breaking through walls of prejudice, one small act at a time. Andrew knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time he believed they weren't walking it alone. The Michaels family's growing presence in the community had begun to chip away at long-standing prejudices. But the true test of their resilience and the town's character came with a series of crises that no one could have predicted. It began with whispers of a flu-like illness spreading through the nearby towns. At first, it was just a few cases, but within weeks, the sickness had reached their neighborhood, overwhelming local hospitals and leaving families in panic. Schools and businesses shut down, and the community faced a grim reality. They were unprepared. Andrew Michaels and his daughters didn't hesitate. They sprang into action, determined to help however they could. One evening, Andrew gathered his daughters in the library, now their central meeting space for family discussions. "We're going to do something big," he began, his voice steady. "The hospitals can't keep up, and people need help. We're turning our home into a care center for overflow patients." The girls looked at him, startled but resolute. "What can we do?" Maya asked, her natural leadership kicking in. Everything, Andrew said. We'll set up rooms for patients, coordinate with local doctors, and make sure no one gets left behind. Within days, the grand mansion was unrecognizable. Chandeliers sparkled over makeshift hospital beds, and hallways once filled with laughter now bustled with medical activity. Maya and Rachel worked tirelessly alongside local healthcare workers, organizing supplies and administering basic care. Jasmine managed the flow of patients, using her natural charisma to keep everyone calm. Even little Tessa found a way to help, handing out water bottles and comforting patients with her cheerful smile. As if the epidemic wasn't enough, disaster struck again in the form of a massive storm. Torrential rain overwhelmed the town's drainage systems, turning streets into rivers and isolating the community from outside help. Power lines fell, roads were blocked by debris, and panic set in. Inside the Michaels mansion, Andrew and his daughters huddled around a table lit by candlelight, devising a plan. Maya, you'll coordinate with the emergency responders, Andrew instructed. Rachel, work with Jasmine to organize patient records. Tira and Tessa, you'll help distribute supplies. What about you, Dad? Maya asked. Andrew smiled, though fatigue was etched into his features. I'll be right here with all of you. We're in this together. The mansion's backup generator hummed steadily as the family opened their doors to more patients, some arriving soaked and shivering from the floodwaters. One evening, a knock at the door revealed a group of well-dressed neighbors standing in the pouring rain. Among them was Margaret Harrington, who once spearheaded efforts to have the Michaels family removed from the neighborhood. Her husband supported her as she clutched a trembling handkerchief. Please, Margaret said, her voice breaking. My husband is ill. We didn't know where else to go. Behind her, Richard Peterson and other prominent neighbors looked equally desperate. Their private doctors couldn't reach them through the floodwaters, leaving them with no choice but to seek help from the Michaels family. Andrew opened the door wide. Come in, he said without hesitation. The girls exchanged glances but didn't falter. They moved quickly to set up beds for the new arrivals, treating them with the same kindness they showed everyone else. Margaret approached Rachel as she checked her husband's temperature. Why are you helping us? She asked, tears streaming down her face. After everything we've done. Rachel paused, looking up with quiet resolve. Because it's what our dad taught us, she said simply. The storm raged for days, but inside the mansion, something remarkable happened. Neighbors who had once avoided the Michaels family now worked side by side with them, helping care for patients and organizing supplies. Mrs. Chen, the flower shop owner, brought fresh bouquets to brighten the makeshift wards. Miss Patterson from the shelter coordinated food deliveries. Even Richard Peterson, once Andrew's harshest critic, spent hours assisting with basic medical tasks. One night, as he bandaged a patient's arm, he glanced at Andrew and said, I was wrong about you, about all of this. Andrew's response was simple but heartfelt. What matters is what we do now. Among the most heart-wrenching moments was when Mrs. Wellington, the neighborhood association president, arrived with her feverish grandson. She had been one of the loudest voices against the Michaels family, yet now she stood before them, vulnerable and afraid. Maya took the boy's hand, leading him to a bed. We'll take care of him, she promised. Later, as Mrs. Wellington sat by her grandson's side, she watched the sisters move tirelessly through the room, offering comfort and care. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered to Andrew, Your daughters are extraordinary, better than we ever deserved. Andrew placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They're doing what anyone should, treating people with kindness, no matter what. As the floodwaters receded and the epidemic began to ease, the Michaels family found themselves at the center of the community's gratitude. The mansion, once a symbol of division, had become a sanctuary for healing and unity. A local journalist who had heard about their efforts arrived to document the story. The resulting article, titled The Family That Saved Our Town, painted the Michaels family as heroes. Andrew Michaels and his 7 daughters didn't just offer help. They gave hope to a community in crisis, the article read. The story spread quickly, and soon the family received letters of gratitude from people they had never met. The events left a profound impact on the town. Margaret Harrington began organizing fundraisers to support local healthcare initiatives, crediting the Michaels family for inspiring her. Richard Peterson publicly apologized at a town meeting, his voice thick with emotion. "I let my prejudice blind me to the good in front of me," he said. The Michaels family showed us what it means to be neighbors. At that same meeting, the neighborhood association voted to formally withdraw all previous complaints against the Michaels family. Mrs. Wellington resigned as president, acknowledging that her actions had caused unnecessary harm. One evening, after the chaos had settled, Andrew sat on the porch with his daughters, watching the stars. "Do you think they've really changed, Dad?" Jasmine asked, her voice tinged with both hope and skepticism. Andrew smiled, pulling her close. "I think change takes time," he said. "But I believe we've planted the seeds. The rest is up to them." The girls nodded, their faces thoughtful. They knew their journey wasn't over, but they also knew they had made a difference. As the family prepared to return to their daily routines, they found themselves embraced by a community that had once shunned them. Neighbors who had once crossed the street to avoid them now waved warmly, some even stopping by to chat or offer small gifts. At the local grocery store, the clerk who used to look past them now greeted them by name. At the park, parents who once pulled their children away now encouraged them to join the Michaels sisters in play. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The Michaels family had faced the greatest tests of their strength and compassion, and they had emerged not only unbroken, but triumphant. Their efforts had not only healed a fractured community, but also created a legacy of love and resilience that would endure for years to come. As the community slowly began to recover from the double crises of the epidemic and the flood, the Michaels family found themselves at the center of an extraordinary transformation. Their acts of kindness and resilience had opened hearts, but forgiveness and redemption required something deeper: accountability. One sunny afternoon, the town held a special meeting at the community center. It was the first gathering since the crises, and the room buzzed with anticipation. Andrew and his daughters sat together in the front row, their presence commanding both respect and admiration. The meeting began with Richard Peterson, who rose to address the room. His usual confidence was replaced by humility as he cleared his throat. "I have come here today, not as your neighbor, but as a man seeking forgiveness," he began. "For years, I judged the Michaels family unfairly. I whispered behind their backs. I contributed to their isolation, and I allowed prejudice to blind me. Yet when my family needed help the most, it was Andrew Michaels and his daughters who stepped up." His voice broke slightly as he continued. "I don't deserve their kindness, but I am here to say this: I was wrong, and I will spend the rest of my days making it right." A ripple of emotion swept through the room as other neighbors, inspired by Richard's courage, began to stand and speak. Margaret Harrington, clutching her signature pearl necklace, admitted, "I was so afraid of change that I let fear dictate my actions. The Michaels family has taught me that love and understanding are far stronger than fear." Even Mrs. Wellington, the former head of the neighborhood association, stepped forward. "I led efforts to ostracize this family," she confessed, her voice trembling. "And yet, when my grandson's life was on the line, they saved him without hesitation." That is the kind of neighbor we should all aspire to be. Though the apologies were heartfelt, Andrew knew that true healing required more than words. Standing before the crowd, he spoke with calm determination. "We've all been through a lot," he began, his voice steady. "And I believe this community has the potential to grow into something better. But that growth requires accountability. The leadership of the neighborhood association worked to divide us instead of bringing us together. And that cannot continue." The room fell silent. Mrs. Wellington and her associates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I propose a vote to elect new leadership," Andrew continued. "Leaders who will prioritize inclusion, fairness, and compassion." Hands shot up across the room, signaling agreement. The decision was unanimous. The current leadership would step down immediately. As the former leaders quietly left the hall, Andrew's youngest daughter, Tessa, tugged on his sleeve. "Did we do the right thing, Dad?" she whispered. Andrew knelt beside her, meeting her wide eyes. "Sometimes doing the right thing means standing up for what's just, even when it's hard," he said softly. And today, we did just that. To mark the community's new beginning, a town-wide celebration was organized in the Central Park. The event was unlike anything the Michaels family had experienced before. Colorful banners flapped in the breeze, and rows of chairs were arranged beneath a canopy of twinkling lights. The park, which the girls had helped clean so many times, now felt like a place of belonging. Mayor Thompson took the stage to deliver a heartfelt speech. "Today, we honor a family who has shown us the true meaning of courage and compassion," she said. Andrew Michaels and his daughters didn't just survive the hardships, they transformed them into opportunities to bring us together. The mayor unveiled a bronze plaque mounted on a stone pedestal at the center of the park. The inscription read, "In honor of the Michaels family, whose unwavering strength, boundless compassion, and dedication to our community remind us that love conquers all barriers." The girls stood together, tears streaming down their faces as they read the words. Andrew wrapped his arms around them, his own eyes misty with emotion. "This plaque," the mayor continued, "will remain here as a permanent reminder of the power of unity and forgiveness." As the celebration continued, neighbors who had once kept their distance now approached the Michaels family with warm smiles and heartfelt words. Mrs. Chen, the flower shop owner, brought over a small bouquet for Tessa. "I've watched you girls grow into incredible young women," she said. "Thank you for teaching us what kindness really means." The Peterson children, who had once been forbidden to play with the Michaels sisters, ran up to them with excitement. "Can we play soccer with you now?" One of them asked Jasmine, who laughed and nodded. Even Mrs. Harrington, usually reserved, offered a plate of homemade cookies. "I hope you'll forgive me for being so cold before," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Maya stepped forward, her tone thoughtful but kind. "It hurt, yes. But forgiveness isn't just for you. It's for us, too. We're ready to move forward." Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and the park lights dimmed, the family sat together on their porch, watching the stars. The bronze plaque in the park gleamed faintly in the distance, a symbol of everything they had overcome. "Do you think we've finally been accepted?" Rachel asked, leaning her head against Andrew's shoulder. Andrew smiled, his gaze fixed on the night sky. "Acceptance is a journey, not a destination," he said. "What matters is that we've shown them who we are. The rest will come in time." The girls nodded, their faces serene. They knew there would still be challenges ahead, but they also knew they had the strength to face them together. The Michaels family's journey from ridicule to respect became a cornerstone of the community's history. Their story was shared at town meetings, school events, and even church services, serving as a reminder of the importance of empathy and understanding. Neighbors who once viewed them as outsiders now saw them as the heart of the town. People began volunteering more, inspired by the family's example. The Michaels sisters, once isolated, became role models for other children, teaching them the value of kindness and perseverance. Even the neighborhood itself began to transform. New leadership in the association prioritized inclusivity, organizing events that celebrated the community's diversity. The park cleanup days, once led solely by the Michaels family, became town-wide initiatives with dozens of volunteers eager to contribute. The mansion that had once symbolized division now stood as a beacon of hope. Its doors, once closed to a hostile world, remained open to anyone in need. As the town healed, so did the Michaels family. They had faced prejudice and pain, but they had chosen forgiveness and love. In doing so, they not only changed their own lives, but also inspired an entire community to rise above its flaws. The Michaels family had become more than neighbors. They had become the glue that held the town together, proving that redemption was always possible with an open heart. The years that followed saw the Michaels family blossom in ways neither Andrew nor his daughters could have imagined. Their once uncertain journey as a family had become a story of hope and triumph. One that inspired not only their small town, but communities far beyond. Maya, the eldest, had always carried the weight of responsibility for her sisters. It was no surprise that she pursued a career in medicine, graduating at the top of her class from medical school. She became a pediatrician at the local hospital, her kind demeanor earning her the trust of even the most anxious young patients. "It's because I know what it's like to feel small and scared," she explained during an interview. I want every child to know they're safe and cared for, just like my dad made me feel. Rachel, whose love for science had blossomed in the family library, became a nurse specializing in geriatric care. Her calm and empathetic nature made her a favorite among her patients, who often described her as a beacon of light in their most difficult times. Jasmine, the family's energetic athlete, channeled her leadership skills into sports management, eventually coaching a girls' soccer team. Coach Jasmine, as her players called her, made it her mission to instill confidence and resilience in her team. Tessa, the youngest, followed in Maya's footsteps, pursuing a degree in child psychology. Her playful spirit and natural ability to connect with children made her a beloved figure in her field. The other sisters found their paths as well. Kira excelled in public policy, advocating for foster care reform, while Sarah became a talented artist, using her work to raise awareness about social issues. Together, they embodied the values Andrew had instilled in them: kindness, perseverance, and a drive to make the world better. Despite their busy lives, the Michaels sisters never forgot the lessons they had learned during their time in the mansion. They continued to organize community projects, from free health screenings to educational workshops. Their impact reached far beyond their town, drawing attention from nearby cities that sought to replicate their initiatives. One of their most significant projects was the creation of the Michaels Family Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting foster children and families. The foundation provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources for children aging out of the foster care system. This foundation is our way of paying it forward, Maya explained at the foundation's launch event. We were given a chance to thrive because someone believed in us. Now it's our turn to believe in others. Back in their hometown, the transformation was evident. The same neighbors who had once judged them now celebrated their successes. Children who had once been warned to stay away from the Michaels sisters now looked up to them as role models. The neighborhood association, under new leadership, became a force for good, organizing events that celebrated diversity and inclusion. The annual Fall Festival, once a place of division, had evolved into a joyous gathering where families of all backgrounds felt welcome. One fall afternoon, as Andrew walked through the park with his daughters, they passed a group of children painting pumpkins at the festival. "Hey, look! It's the Michaels family!" one of the kids exclaimed, waving enthusiastically. Andrew smiled and waved back, his heart swelling with pride. The journey had been long, but they had arrived. In his later years, Andrew often found himself reflecting on how far they had come. His once lonely mansion was now filled with memories of love and laughter, and his daughters had grown into extraordinary women who carried their values into the world. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Andrew raised his glass in a toast. "To all of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to live a life with purpose. I couldn't be prouder." Maya, seated beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "We wouldn't be here without you, Dad," she said. "You gave us a chance when no one else would." The sisters raised their glasses, their bond unbreakable. The Michaels family's story spread far and wide, becoming a symbol of resilience, love, and the power of community. Schools invited them to speak about their journey, and their foundation grew into a national organization, helping thousands of children across the country. Their mansion, once a target of scorn, became a historic landmark in the town, its gates always open to those in need. A plaque in the town square, dedicated to the family, bore the words that had come to define their journey: "Love conquers all barriers." As the years went on, the sisters began raising families of their own, bringing their children back to the mansion for holidays and celebrations. Andrew, now a proud grandfather, often watched the next generation play in the same halls where his daughters had once laughed and grown. One afternoon, as he sat on the porch, Tessa's young daughter climbed onto his lap. "Grandpa, is it true you saved everyone in the big flood?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Andrew chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It wasn't just me," he said, "it was all of us. A family can do amazing things when they stick together." The little girl grinned. "Then I want to be just like you." The town continued to celebrate the Michaels family, hosting an annual day of service in their honor. Each year, residents gathered to clean parks, donate to shelters, and support foster care initiatives inspired by the family's legacy. Maya, Rachel, Jasmine, and the others often returned for these events, rolling up their sleeves and working alongside their neighbors. The same park where they had once faced rejection was now filled with warmth and laughter, a testament to how much had changed. As Andrew watched his daughters and grandchildren thrive, he felt a sense of fulfillment that words could scarcely capture. Their journey had been far from easy, but it had been worth every challenge, every tear, and every triumph. The Michaels family's story wasn't just theirs, it belonged to everyone who believed in the power of love and forgiveness. And in the quiet moments as the sun set over the mansion, Andrew would smile to himself, knowing that Lucy, his late daughter, would have been proud. The story of Andrew Michaels and his 7 daughters is more than just a tale of resilience and transformation. It's a powerful reminder of the strength of love, the importance of forgiveness, and the profound impact one family can have on an entire community. Through their journey, we see that no challenge is too great when faced with compassion and determination. What began as an act of kindness, adopting 7 sisters to give them a home, blossomed into something far greater. Andrew's unwavering commitment to his daughters and their shared efforts to rise above prejudice turned skeptics into allies and a fractured neighborhood into a united community. Their story teaches us that change often starts small, with acts of kindness and courage, but it can grow into something extraordinary when nurtured with hope. The Michaels family didn't just transform their own lives. They inspired those around them to reevaluate their beliefs, embrace understanding, and work toward a more inclusive world. At its heart, their journey shows that true family isn't defined by blood or background, but by the bonds we choose to create and the love we choose to share. If this story moves you, we'd love to hear from you. What did you take away from Andrew and his daughter's journey? Did it inspire you or make you reflect on your own experiences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you thought the story was good, leave a 1 in the comments. If you thought it was amazing, comment with a 2. And if you've ever faced a challenge that changed you or your community, we'd love to hear your story as well. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another meaningful story like this one. Your support helps us continue to share tales that inspire and bring hope. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.